All right, welcome to Out from the Cube. I am your host, George Evjen. Very excited about today's guest and the content and the conversation that we are about to have over the next 45 minutes. I'm very excited. Joe has been co-hosting with us for maybe this might be episode 4 or 5, Joe, that we've done together. And Joe has some great connections in his own network that he's brought in, and I think when we first started talking about this, Joe, you said, you know what, there's one guy that I know we need to have on as soon as possible onto this podcast and to have a great conversation with. And he mentioned Don, and we finally got it scheduled after a week or two. And so, Don, I know you're just learning about, we just met, in the past 5 or 10 minutes. So, and I briefly mentioned offline that your background is much better than my background or Joe's background with the video that we have going on.
No.
We just got to recruit smarter people than us. This is easy.
Right. But welcome. I appreciate you making time for us. I know you're busy and have other responsibilities other than chatting with us. But I appreciate you making time for us today.
Great. Guys, thanks, George and Joe. I'm really excited about the opportunity to be able to talk with you all. I mean, I've looked at your podcast and the videos, and this is a really worthy group and worthy topics that you all are covering. And I'm glad to be able to join you today and be a part of it as we, just have this conversation.
Yeah, it's a conversation kind of over a cup of coffee later in the afternoon.
Yep.
When I look through your bio, and I said this in the last episode that Joe and I did together, I don't spend a whole lot of time researching the people that come on. And I very much like it to be kind of organic and just whatever strikes us, we end up talking about. When I did look through your profile, quickly, there was one thing that immediately grabbed my eye. One, I know you have a military background. And so I was super excited about that because I was raised with a military family. So I have a great reverence and respect for the service and the people that serve for us, and put their lives on the line and make decisions for our freedom. So I greatly respect the service that you've done with that. But when I was looking through your bio, the thing that caught my eye that immediately I felt kind of a connection to you with is that you went to the Air Force Academy. And I don't know the details of it, but this is my only experience with the Air Force Academy. I coached small college basketball, junior college basketball in Colorado. And we played 2 games against the Air Force JV. Now, I don't know, it was like their academy school or whatever, but we got to play on campus. And it was my first time ever on one of the service campuses. Like I've never been to West Point and some of the other places. But when I walked on that academy for the Air Force Academy, it is one of the most beautiful facilities, that I've ever been. And so when I saw that you had been at the academy, I was like, oh, I got to ask him about his experiences did you spend time there? Because when I bring that up sometimes with people, they're like, I was never there. Did you spend time at the academy there?
No, George, that's a great question. The answer is yes. I'm a graduate of class in 1984. So I came in 1980 and left in 1984. The academy experience is a really good one. It's primarily an engineering school. I walked out with a degree in electrical engineering, which I've never used since, but it's primarily an engineering school and a leadership school. It's focused on the whole person and leading airmen. Right after you walk out of the academy, you come out with a second lieutenant rank, and you could be very quickly leading airmen in the field in deployed operations as well. I walked out, I went into pilot training, and from there started my Air Force career. I agree with you. The academy is absolutely gorgeous. For folks that have not had the opportunity to go there, it's in Colorado Springs, Colorado. It's nestled right up against the mountains of the Rampart Range, just part of the Rocky Mountain chain. And as you sit, you can look out onto the vast fields and everything that fall away from the Rocky Mountains and go out towards eastern Colorado and into Kansas. And the mountains there are stunning. The academy itself, what makes it a little bit unique is, one, how big it is. A lot of the other academies, West Point and Annapolis, they're much more geographically tight than the Air Force Academy. Now, the actual campus with the cadets on it is very, very tightly arranged. But the academy grounds itself is fairly expansive. And it's still very modern looking when they designed it and created the academy. And I hope you had the chance to walk around and see the chapel and things like that. It still has a very modern feel to it. lots of stainless steel and chrome, and you definitely get a feeling from the architect that you're trying to fly. And I think that was the actual intent. So it was a wonderful experience. Really am thankful for the opportunity to have been able to go there. But the long answer to your short question, yes, I attended the academy for 4 years, graduate of 1984.
Now that's not an easy place to get into. So, so getting in there, and did you grow up in the St. Louis area? I know you've been here for quite a while, but is this where you're from originally then?
No, that's another great question. So hang on for the ride. I was born in Harbel, Liberia, West Africa. My parents worked for Firestone. My father was a civil engineer. My mother was a head nurse. And at the time, they met actually in Liberia, got married, and I was born. And shortly after that, we moved to Hawaii. So I grew up in Hawaii. Now, why were they with Firestone in Africa? Well, back then, Firestone and other companies still tapped rubber trees for the sap to be able to produce rubber for tires and other products. So what they would do is they would take their plantation facility, and when they were doing a major expansion, which is what they were doing back at that time, they would then bring in the teams that would expand the entire facility structure for that plantation. And a plantation at Firestone back then was very much like being on a military base of today. It's a small town unto itself. You had everything that you would have in a small town: schools, a hospital, grocery stores, movie theaters, you name it. This team came in, of which my father and mother were part, to be able to expand the hospital. Got married. I was born, grew up in Hawaii, and then left. And my first real experience living in the mainland, as we called it, from being in the islands, was when I went to the Air Force Academy in 1980.
Wow.
So that is my background as in Hawaii as well, as a Navy, as a part of the Navy. And so I spent some time there as well in the Navy. So when you I know we only have so much time, and I know Joe and I have a lot of questions with your background in terms of leadership and things like that. But when your time in the Air Force, and then when you got out, was it spent flying? And then how did you position? Because right now you and looking through your resume and your background and things of that nature, it's always been leading, running large organizations, large teams. But did you start out being a pilot and doing things of that nature in aeronautics, or did it, and then position into business leadership and things of that nature?
Great question. The answer is yes. The short answer is yes. I started right after graduating from the Air Force Academy. I went to Phoenix, Arizona, where Williams Air Force Base was. Now it's closed. It's a commercial hub base. I went through pilot training there. I stayed on at Williams. I was brought back to be what's known as a first assignment instructor pilot. So I taught the next generation of pilots behind me for about 3 years. Following that period, so say, the late 80s, early 90s, we then entered, all of us that were first assignment instructor pilots, then moved on to our other flying career positions. I was brought into the air mobility world. So think Scott Air Force Base, for those of us that are on the podcast that are familiar with the St. Louis area. Scott Air Force Base on the Illinois side is the headquarters and center of Air Mobility Command. And what we do is air mobility, airlift, so hauling people and stuff, air refueling, gas stations in the sky, and what we in the civilian world today call a life flight, the military calls air medical evacuation. Those were our core competencies. So I ended up, next part of my career was being as an airlifter. I flew C-130s, which are 4-engine propeller tactical aircraft, transitioned into air refuelers in the KC-135, had the opportunity to fly all over the world, a lot of time spent in Europe and in the Middle East, as you'd expect, operating with relief operations in Somalia and a lot of disaster support. But it was during that period of being a pilot that I knew I wanted to command and lead. And naturally, by the way, everyone that comes out, no matter your position in the Air Force, whether you're a young airman or a senior enlisted person, non-commissioned officer, or an officer, you are a leader, and you're leading teams, and you're taking a mission and advancing it and getting the job done. I wanted to continue in that role of leadership, so I had the opportunity, really, truly a great opportunity and blessing, to become a squadron commander. So I ran a flying unit of about 100 people, and then a variety of different positions to eventually culminate my command career by running McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita. So I had 3,500 people. It was the free world's largest air refueling wing. It had 3,500 people, about 39 aircraft, $130 million operating budget, about $2 billion in assets when you count the runway. And then from there, had the opportunity to run safety for Air Mobility Command's 55,000 people around the world. So yes, leadership and running organizations and complex scenarios, really, I was really drawn to that.
It's an unbelievable career, Don, that you've had,
Well,
and
you.
we definitely appreciate you for your service. And I've been by that Wichita facility. It's massive. I know how big of an operation that is. That thing is so big.
The funny thing is on the other side of Wichita, so the base owns the 2 runways, but right across the runways from us is huge Boeing facility. That's where they refurbish Air Force One.
Really?
Yeah, that's where they bring Air Force One. And I got to say, as we're talking, I really was privileged and honored to be able to do what I did in the service, what my family was able to do, because no one ever does it alone.
Sure.
They're truly the stay-at-home patriots. But truly, I had the opportunity to stand on the shoulders of giants. If anyone tells you that they were the consummate leader and all this kind of stuff, walk away. You have to honor the people that helped you get there and that you serve, because your job, first and foremost, in that chair is to serve the people actually getting the job done. And I had so many mentors and leaders that helped me teach me how to be who I was that I just can't even begin to thank them all.
One of the things that you mentioned, or at least something you just said, triggered this in me, and I'm interested in your perspective on it as you go from, this military life where this is what I took that you said. We're in the military and everybody is expected to end up, you are being trained to be a leader and to lead people. Like if that's like the people that enlist in that and sign up for that life, that is, those are the people that are going to lead. And I'm interested in your perspective of that kind of that mindset of a leader developing other leaders, like the primary job of a leader to develop more leaders within his organization, which I really believe. Like, and Joe and I know each other well, and we spend a lot of time with young men, in high school. But this idea of like, we're trying to teach you to be leaders and how to be vocal and how to problem solve, things of that nature. But when you go from that world where everybody's maybe on that boat of, hey, we're all developing leaders, to now you're in the business world where maybe not so. Maybe I just want to sit in my cubicle and just, you give me tickets, I'm going to crank this out and I'll deliver, but I don't need to be a leader, right? Is that a hard transition for someone like you that is used to building people up, building leaders, where some people just they don't look at it as a career. They look at it as a job. Like, this is just my job. I'm sitting in a cubicle taking tickets. Don't worry about me.
That's, another great question. So that's a 2-part question to me, because we're dealing with the people who are looking at their position as a job. Let's talk about that, but put that on the side. Now let's talk about developing leaders. When we're developing leaders and focusing on developing leaders, the old joke I heard from one of my bosses was, son, the difference between you and me is scarring. We pass off our wisdom, right? We pass off our experiences, and we help shape and grow people to give them opportunities to grow and expand. But the key thing is we're not just trying to develop leaders so that everybody can be, a general or something like that. Really, it's about getting people to be the most effective and optimized team possible. Because first and foremost, one of the phrases we use is mission first, people always. And I grew up in an environment. One of the first leadership experiences I ever had was when I was in high school in junior ROTC, and we had a Sergeant Lee, who was a Vietnam era vet. He used to say, son, there are only 2 things that matter: the mission and the men. Back then it was all male. He goes, if you don't get the mission done, no one else will. You are the bottom line. You get the mission done. That's what the country has hired you to do. But if you don't take care of your people, they'll never get the job done for you. So you take care of your people first. They will take care of the mission. I never forgot that, and that's been true.
So, Don,
what we do is,
is that why, when I think of military, I think of mission based. And is that why the military is so successful versus, a lot of companies say they have a mission, but they really don't, or they don't follow it. They don't lead it. They don't have that culture. I mean, Why is
Yeah.
it that the military is successful? Is it strictly, I mean, they have a way to getting, the front line focused on the mission? Is that the difference?
That is the difference, I think. I think naturally you have cultural normative differences as well.
Yep.
One of the advantages of the military is all volunteer. You kind of know what you're getting into it when you get into it. I mean, every day's a journey, every day's a discovery. But you're probably aligned. The core values of the Air Force are integrity, excellence in all we do, and service before self. And that is kind of the mindset of the military member. Our job is to serve and do a mission. Now, you've got everything from people that will be in for 4 years, their tour, and then go off and do something else, or career people like myself. It's the advantage we have is we start from day one with team integration and boot camp and team building. And the focus of the mission of what your organization does. Esprit de corps, camaraderie, mission focus is embedded in everything we do. And we all know how our different parts of our job, whether I'm a cook, a driver, or a pilot, it doesn't matter. We're all part of getting this mission done. And we really imbue this sense of mission alignment. And that includes taking care of the families and moving people forward. So when we build leaders, we build people. We had a lot of people. I mean, we got scientists. We've got, all sorts of people that are in the Air Force and the military. And not everyone is going to, fly up and try to be a general officer or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
What you really want to do is take the team that you're given and really amplify and optimize them by knowing your people, aligning them to the mission, and giving them the resources they need to be successful. And part of that is knowing what your people want to do and where they're coming from. Some people want to be the consummate best pilot in the squadron forever. And your job is to help them be that. Now, the system tends to, because of promotion cycles and such, people eventually will have to separate out of the Air Force because of that. But there are people that want to be the quintessential best person of whatever their job is, the best IT gal, the best finance guy, or whatever. And you help optimize them because you need those people that are core experts in what they do. As you're taking other people, they develop this breadth of experience or depth of experience, and then you expand their breadth of exposure to other jobs and other situations. And that's, I think, the fact that we're culturally aligned. Mm-hmm. We're kind of naturally, no matter your diversity of gender, race, religion, it doesn't matter. We're all kind of aligned on this mission mindset. And we start from day one with people, getting them to think about remember, there's no I in team, getting them to think about the team and the mission first, then themselves secondarily.
How much does the military, I like what you said about, and I believe this, that, everybody's got to be coached and led a little different, right? Mm-hmm. You just have to. When I coached in small college basketball, I had kids that I'd have to hug, put my arm around, tell them everything was going to be okay, take them out for ice cream, all that sort. And I had other kids that I could go nose to nose with and tell them that they weren't getting it done, and they would respond. Does the military care that much about stuff like that? Or, do they care about meeting you where you are, or like, hey, here's the standard we play at, and you're either going to reach it or you're going to quit. Right.
Yeah, Joe?
No, I was going to say, because a lot of the pictures that we see, civilians, is military in your face and screaming and shouting. Right. And that's how you're getting work done. When you translate that to a normal job, that's not reality. So, right. I think
so. If I may, let me tell a story about that. It's a bit of both, George. Mm-hmm. Here's our standard, and here's what we're going to do. We perform to this standard. Not everyone's going to meet the standard, right? For whatever reason, it's not aligned to themselves culturally. They don't have the capability to perform to the standard, even after all the coaching and the training and everything else that goes on. They may, remember, the military is a microcosm of society. So we have all the issues that regular society has, just in a much smaller footprint. And we had some bad actors. I mean, when I was running McConnell Air Force Base, it is a small town unto itself. I was a CEO, mayor, and judge, and I had a courtroom. I had prosecutors, defenders. I had, CSI. I had all that stuff. It's the nature of the animal. So when we talk about meeting our people where they are, they're expected to perform to a standard. But what we do is help them and train them and encourage them to meet that standard. And people will come in from all sorts of different walks of life and different backgrounds and experiences and capability sets. So oftentimes, yes, we have to make a standard, and if it's too hard to train somebody up for that skill set, they're probably already departed before they even hit the field, right? They were departed in boot camp or in the technical training or whatever. We just knew they couldn't make it. We helped them separate at that point. But if they're in the military, then what we really do is help address them. Are we touchy-feely? No, not. It depends on your service. I would offer the services have distinct cultures about them. None of the cultures are overly touchy-feely. We're mission-driven, right? But remember, people always. Mission first, people always. Joe, you brought up so yes, we will do some coaching. Our mental health facilities, our care and concern about the mental and physical health of our family members and our military members, you blow your mind. I spent more time worrying about how my people were doing than anything else. I worried about mold in housing because I cared about the families. Getting to the idea of this persona or this stereotype of the screaming military guy, we had the opportunity to do a military panel, military to business translation at WashU's executive MBA program. And I had 2 slides. And I'll take a very short story. The first slide was of a Marine boot camp, and there's the quintessential drill sergeant, TI, screaming in the face of some hapless, recruit, and it says, yes, sir, no, sir, may I ask a question, sir, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but that's not the military. The next slide. And it shocked me how long we spent because people asked a lot of questions. And imagine this visually. You have a picture of a group, a squad of Army enlisted individuals. So the highest ranking one's probably a sergeant. They are in Afghanistan. They are in the concrete. It's literally a cinder block building with nothing else in it, of the local village leader. They're all sitting on the ground with the village leader. The lead of this team, the sergeant, is a blonde female. Between the sergeant and the leader is their translator because none of them speaks the local dialect. And they have to get business done. And they're trying to work with this local team to, the leader in the village to provide security and to advance the objectives and goals. And when you look at the other team members, there's an African male, another female, and a Caucasian guy. And they're all sitting on the floor paying attention to the leader. It's about connection. It's about influence. Leadership, if you have to get to the point of ordering something, I mean, like in your face ordering, either something's really gone bad very quickly and you have to be super directive. Like we have an engine fire, do this. Or things have kind of gone sideways, right? Because really you lead by inspiration, by example, by setting clear goals, objectives. People know what they need to do and you move them forward with that. Yeah.
So, Don, I've had the opportunity to hire quite a few people from the military and or even ex-cops to me sometimes fall in this boat. Strengths and opportunities, much like anybody else. What I found is very punctual, and you can tell me where I'm probably missing. Very punctual, very respectful, very hard workers, going to get the job done. Where we have found opportunities is sometimes just adapting to the company culture. A lot of times using military jargon that doesn't make sense. Hey, this meeting's at 0600, and I'm like, what does 0600 mean? I got to do the math in my head, and you guys, military people, that's just normal, right? Yep. So, what do you say for somebody that's hiring people? Like, how do we make them adjust into that culture? If I'm leading teams, like what can the company do or the manager do to really put that person in ease and make sure that there's a smooth transition?
That they're successful, right?
Right. Because there's a lot of value in those employees. Like, how do we make that transition smoother?
I tell you, I would offer that your military member or your other first responder kind of member, I'll expand the window, but your military member, they are truly a competitive advantage for you. And they're, their natural fiber for most people, you always have, outliers, but their natural fiber is to work hard and get the job done. People think about the military, and I'm going to get to your specific point in just a minute. People think about the military, and yes, at the younger enlisted ranks, shall we say, and depending on your service as well, what services you come from. The ground forces, the Army and the Marines, tend to be much more hierarchical in nature, and people tend to have challenges dealing in a more open kind of work environment than a hierarchical structure. And that's frankly why a lot of military people, when you see them, they tend not to move that far from the fence line of the base in a way, right? You look at a lot of military people, they will tend to retire or separate and then go into defense support or into Boeing or things like that because they're, because it's comfortable. It's culturally normative. It's similar. So I will get to the point about how to help this new team member be successful. But when we think about your military member, they really are a hidden competitive advantage. One, they're designed to work, right? They're going to get the job done. Two, you're probably going to have to step out of the way. Give them the parameters and let them take it, right? They can execute. They can also follow detail well. People think, especially in the Air Force, you think you've got all these structures and operating procedures and these tech orders to fly your aircraft, and you've got a procedure or process for everything. What people don't realize is that the standardization actually allows flexibility and innovation. Because if you don't have to think about how to get these little things done, you can spend more time on shaping the environment and the mission. And we found in aviation, everything's a checklist for us. But the reason that is because we're flying the aircraft in the mission. And we're able to use the checklist so we don't get distracted by trying to figure things out. We're able to actually focus on change-ups. Military is shockingly innovative if you think about it. And that would be one thing I would say, especially if you're higher enlisted and your officer level, look for innovation. Look for people that will challenge the status quo to do it better. People from the military have leadership training throughout their careers. They typically get significant responsibility early. They tend to be very agile and adaptable. Think about that, that Army squad I told you about in the middle of Afghanistan. Naturally service and driven mission. If you want to dissuade a military member, give them a sense that what they're doing, the two things we used to send people, I remember this. We would send people into combat. Families were on food stamps. I mean, that's kind of the pay structure for our young people. But I'll tell you, they will go to hell and back for you if they believe what they're doing is important, that they're appreciated, not recognized, they don't need baubles, that they're appreciated, that they're considered a valued team member, and you take care of their family. They will go to hell and back again for you.
You find that also those same tenets in the workforce now, don't you? With people that are working, that are sitting in cubicles, taking tickets and doing these tasks over and over again. Like, hey, like they're not a commodity. We have to sit back and say, hey, like they are valuable, they are important, their work does matter, they are contributing, they are significant, things of that nature, right? I mean, those are the same, the soldiers that are on the front lines that are 18 to 24 years old that'll go to hell and back, as you say. Those are the things that they want, and I think that our workforce wants similar things, don't they?
I think so. I think your millennial workforce and post-millennial clearly align that way. They've got to feel what they're doing is important. So how do I help a new manager with a new military member? Probably the first thing is to get to know the person. Find out about their background. Find out about their military experience. Because you're going to understand what level of autonomy they had, right? And what kind of things they were responsible for. You'll find hidden gold just in conversing with them that you won't see in the resume. Then the way you help them is help them understand the cultural norms, the culture, and the normative processes and procedures in the environment you're in. I went from a military background, the Air Force, into healthcare innovation and education, and then most recently into nonprofit leadership. Each one of them was a distinctly different cultural and normative set. And what you need to do is give them time, give them coaching. Help them to understand, make sure they know they should ask questions when they don't know something. Because the military guy's probably going to try to figure it out on his own because he doesn't want to distract you. It's his job to solve problems. But coach them, get to know them, and you'll understand, and then help coach them away from, they're going to go to where they're comfortable, right? If, and they would like, if I'm an operator that's working in a finance industry right now, I'm probably going to use a lot of operator terms. Right. help them to realize it's okay to adapt and become agile in the organization.
Yeah, I think
some people will make it, some won't. I'll be honest.
No, that's fair. I know a couple of times where I have given some direction. Basically, new military coming straight from military. This is their first job, and I gave some direction. And they went and did exactly what I said. Now, then I kind of come circle back, find out like, probably push the buttons a little too far, didn't kind of play within the company guidelines. But, like the words that came out of my mouth, for them, this was like, well, this was the direction of my superior, my boss. Like, this is exactly what you said. And I was like, okay, yeah, I did say that. But well, let's talk about this a little bit further. Like if you run into this next time, because that was definitely a learning for me. And, and that probably happens a lot. The other thing that I was thinking about too is as you're kind of speaking to this, especially now that I'm working in big companies where you have other military people, like why didn't I partner that person, that new hire straight off the military with somebody else that we had that's military that can speak the language and help them adapt and help them understand the culture, really just bridge that gap. And that can be their buddy for a while and they can be their mentor for the first, 30, 60, 90 days. Like, I don't know why we didn't do that.
Well, it's not we don't naturally connect that, but that's a great point. It's mentorship. Yeah. If I get somebody in my shop who's, just out of school, who's financial, I'm going to find the financial person that came from their same school and, see if that person's a good mentor, be able to plug those two together to help make the integration easier. And your military. So I'm going to ask a question of you, Joe. The military people you're talking about, or the individual.
Sure.
Do you happen to remember what service they were from and what rank they were?
There's two people.
More junior?
Yes, more junior in nature.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is when you get more senior, they're much more used to ambiguity.
Yep.
And when you look at the organizational chart of the international team in Afghanistan, it makes spaghetti look easy. It's just crazy when you've got all these lines and who can talk to who and who influences what, and where are the warlords in this, and and so they're used to dealing in very complex cross matrix organization. They're much more agile. So a good thing you can offer to your military members, especially if they're new, there's a phrase in the military called commander's intent. Okay. It's used principally by the ground forces in the Army. And if you imagine Desert One, when we were fighting against Iraq, commander's intent, it's used all the time, but it's a great example. The commander would say, here's what I want to get done in the next 72 hours. Here's what I want your unit to do, but the overarching goal is this. So that when you're in the middle of it, trying to get to that final goal, and you can't do exactly what you need to do, you're going to pivot and work around the obstacles and get to the end state. You know what the desired end state is and where you need to be and what needs to happen. Sometimes providing the commander's intent lets them know what the lanes are. Because barring lanes, if you told them to take that hill or solve that problem, they're going to break glass to get it done. Yeah, because they don't have a problem taking initiative and getting the job done.
Yeah. You said something earlier about 20 or so minutes ago that caught me. And it was when you were talking about the high standards that the military may have, and then you said something along the lines of if they're not capable, and kind of how I view the military a little bit. And I'm just curious your perspective, and then how this would position back into the professional business world is if people are people capable of reaching the high standards? Are most people, very high percentage, 90, 95 or higher, capable of playing at and reaching the high standards set by the military? Or are there just some people that just flat out shouldn't be there, can't do it, never going to do it, and all that? Do you subscribe to that, or can everybody play at that standard?
I subscribe to that. Not everybody can play at the standard, but the caveat is you do a good job in your hiring and selecting process. You'll know who's a good fit culturally.
Yeah.
I think about, there's a lot of different books on this, but I think in terms of three capabilities: the willpower to do the job, and that's usually team first, not me first. Willpower, willingness, capability, which usually means skills. There is some intellectual, capacity in that too, but willpower, capability, and capacity. And most people that are operating in the military can, in fact, if you think about it, when you look at your military, Very few people leave the military because they were not capable of doing the job. They usually leave over time because their life has caused, or they've decided to take a different career path in their life, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, they want to go do something else. You know, I've had 9 years. I loved what I was doing. I want to go fly for the airlines now. You know, I want to be able to transition, and they take all the goodness of this exposure with them.
Mm-hmm.
But every organization, you know, that argument could be used with any organization. Actually, we just tend to think of the military with higher standards. Every organization can ask itself the same question, and you're going to have people in the organization that don't have the skill set right now to do it, but you can train them up to it.
Yeah.
They may not have the willingness. They may not be team players. They may, you know, be antibodies in the organization. They need to find a different place to be successful. And of course, the military is a microcosm of society. You'll have some people that couldn't hack the job and the position. We usually filter them out in boot camp and the technical training.
Right.
Or over time, there are some bad actors. You will have some criminal activity, but that same thing happens in corporate as well.
Sure.
Yeah, so that is, you said exactly what I was thinking. I mean, if I'm good enough to be admitted to be in the service, then hopefully that process of me getting accepted, I'm capable. And I really like the 3 points that you mentioned. But you mentioned something in there that made me smile, that I'm thinking about, and I'm wondering why. You said something along the lines that business will play at this standard, but then you said, well, the military just plays at a higher standard. Their standards are just going to be higher. So
that's a good point.
I'm wondering why.
That.
No, yeah. So that's the question. Like, why can't we as business people that are entrepreneurs that are running this business or the people, my team, I work in the healthcare for a cancer company. Why can't my team now, you know, it's not life or death. I'm not asking people to storm beaches, right? And all this sort of stuff. But we still expect great results. I still expect them to play at a high level. I still expect them to be a team and contribute and do great work and things like that. But again, I think you were saying maybe.
Let me flip it over, because when I said that, I completely agree with you. I've had the opportunity to work in a couple of different organizations and work with different organizations, and their integrity, their service, their excellence on par.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of making that statement, I think, hearkening back to the image of that Marine drill sergeant yelling at the poor recruit. There's this kind of mental picture, right? That, you know, the military has higher standards than everybody else does, and they live in a different domain. And okay, yes, that's true in some. I think in general, we all live and aspire to the same levels of standards. When I'm putting that caveat on there, I'm thinking about if you're dealing with nuclear weapons or you're dealing with life and death decisions, which these folks deal with all the time. It's a different kind of domain and environment. But those are kind of specific. But when it comes to integrity, service, excellence, mission accomplishment, and orientation, I've seen some organizations that are just amazing at doing that. And there is, you know, it's not like the military has this secret sauce that no one else has. Absolutely not. We just have more of a crucible to refine, I think, over time. And that's why you get this certain product coming out of the military that may not necessarily have.
Do you think that's because that it is life and death? Whereas if Joe and I are out there, you know, selling cars, and I work for Joe and he's trying to raise this high standard, at the end of the day, I'm not dying, he's not dying. So you have to play. The standards have to be at a very high level, in the focus and the details and the connections and the commitments and the working together all have to be at an A+ level, because people may die. Right. And
I think to flip it over, the standards are the natural outcome of the impact of failure. If I fail to sell all the cars today, that's not good. But if I fail to deliver supplies to somebody in a firefight, they may die. So it's not that it's better, not in any way, shape, or form. I don't want us to make this a better than kind of discussion at all. Not at all. I'm just saying, I think the impact or the severity of failure or the impact of failure has generates a different level of expectancy of performance with it. You know, you can't make a mistake with nuclear weapons.
No, you can't. To me, the military is successful because it all focuses back on that mission. And I think that's what the military does so well that companies don't do well. The military has a mission. It is clearly defined and everybody knows what it is and how to go do it. Companies are not great at that. In my opinion, companies have to set cultures up for why are we here? And the reason you're here is not just to get a paycheck. Like there is a reason, you know, if a company can create a culture that says we are impacting the world beyond just what you're doing, sitting at the desk and making phone calls or, you know, moving boxes or whatever it is, how do you, you know, create a culture that is bigger than what we're doing? And how is it that, you know, just because you're the janitor, you play a key role into enabling us to get this product and change the world by doing X, Y, Z. And
you hit a spot with me on the janitor there. We're really big about knowing everyone on your team.
Sure.
And like when I entered some other organizations, I would ask, what's the janitor's name? I was shocked how many people didn't know the janitor's name. I'm like, that janitor is just as important as everyone else. If that janitor doesn't do his or her job, somebody else is going to have to take up the slack. And you can see this cascading effect.
Totally agree. Totally.
Yeah. When we, I would say that you're right. The mission alignment is really much more heavily emphasized, I think. But I think there are two other complexing factors with that. Remember, I'm new to the corporate and the business world, so I'm speaking somewhat as an observer and not necessarily as an expert in it. I think the transportability is the phrase I use of people in the corporate civilian world is more than in the military. I grew up as an airlifter, and I had this path, and I went to different units, but it was all in the airlift domain. You know, and if I'm a finance guy, I could be a finance guy for Emerson, and then maybe I'll go be a finance guy for this or finance. So I'm kind of in a career field, alignment, but my ability to transport across organizations is much higher. And we see that because you don't see a lot of, we do move people in and out of organizations all the time, but they tend to be aligned. And that goes into the second part, is this alignment and this cultural normative kind of thing. When somebody would tell me what their job was in the Marines, I knew what that was. I knew, okay, I know what you do. Because our system is somewhat sequestered in a way. So you have this really strong mission alignment, which we all aspire to, but then you have kind of a sequestered culture, a sequestered environment. And that's one of the big transition problems for people in the military. Part of the reason I went to the executive MBA program at WashU is I wanted to learn the language of business. 80 to 90% of our worlds overlap. We just say it differently. And how it works is a little bit different too. But we have this kind of alignment, in the military sense. And there isn't as much flexibility or transportability. I couldn't necessarily be an airlift pilot and say, I really want to go fly helicopters. I'm a pilot. I can translate. Not really. You get a lot more translation, but that's also a richness of the corporate world. Part of the reason we force assignments and force people about 2 to 3 years in a job and then make them move is we don't want to develop a very myopic organization that has no growth, has no flexibility, has no new thinking. We force it by assignments. I think it happens in the corporate world because people naturally move to different jobs in different companies.
With your background, this is how another way I view the military. That's the ultimate team. Like, I mean, everything is built around building those teams, being a part of, knowing that the person I'm next to is depending on me and I'm depending on them. It's the ultimate team. But everything you're talking about are team dynamics. And I guess I'm curious about, now that I would consider you're an expert. You are a team development, team expert in recognizing, shortcomings and excellence and improvements and, bottlenecks and things of that nature. So you going now into the corporate world where you're used to a certain way for teams to kind of be built, the way that they respond, the way they communicate and collaborate and problem solve and all this. Now you're in this corporate world. Is that easy for you to sit in boardrooms now and to observe, like you mentioned earlier, and sit there and then come back a day later with check marks of like, you know what, hey, think about this or think about that. Because I would think that your ability to form teams centered around a mission, that's very, I would think that that would be very easy for you to kind of dissect and to then, be able to coach other organizations up on.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think the answer is a partial yes, because naturally you're aligned, you've been exposed, you put together teams and deployments, things like that, maybe with more experience than other people. But the big challenge is, and I'm always hesitant of, myself in a new role or whatever, we taught people to listen. People want to know that you care before they care what you know. You should listen first.
Yeah.
Because I could walk in and look at this. Now, when it comes to building processes and standards and flows and stuff like that, that's pretty easy and natural, I think, for almost anyone. But the nuance is, if you don't understand the dynamics and the environment of the organization, you're going to build the perfectly good buggy whip when they're driving cars. Right. And you can actually do a disservice to the organization, because now you kind of come in sounding like this know-it-all and this rube. The best thing to do is learn and observe and then ask questions. And I've been making, I want to put a caveat on, I've been making the military sound like this wonderful thing. Obviously, I'm proud of it. I love being in there. I'm so thankful that I had the opportunity to do it, the family that would allow us to do it. Thank God for the family. We could have a whole other podcast of military family. But it's not all rosy. Right. I mean, if you didn't walk away at the end of the day frustrated and tired, you were doing something wrong. We have the same frustrations, the same people get burnt out, the same people that's just a job, depending on what their career field is, especially if they're further from the operational line in the field. We have the same problems that everybody else does. We just wear a different uniform, and email. Remember, email is so evil, it takes 5 letters and not just 4. But it's not all rosy, and it's not all, and we don't have it right, and we're constantly learning and we're constantly evolving.
I've never been in that and never been in that world. But what I admire about the people that are in that world is, obviously the sacrifice and the service and, protecting freedoms and doing things of that nature. And my phone's ringing here with one of my friends that is actually in the Marines of all cool things. As we talk, he's a dynamite guy, but it's individually, it's like who you become, the value that you provide other people, like who you have you're very proud of what you did, who you became, what you provided for people that don't know, like me, and what you're able to provide for your family. Now I'm putting words in your mouth, but that is how I feel, some of the things that you're saying. The one thing, and I know we have a hard stop here at the top of the hour. It's one of these, you said something at the very beginning, and it was all I really needed to know about you. And it's a leadership thing, but leadership is so much about language, how you make people feel, how you can get people to the next level and all that. But I told you at the start of the hour that I have a hard stop. I said, hey, it was 1:45 or something like that. I said, hey, we're going to get going here in a little bit. And I have a hard stop at 3:00, but we can go right up to that. And you paused and you said, no, George, let's make sure we stop at 45. That way you have time to context switch, take a breath, get focused for your meeting and all that. And like, those are just natural, like things that may not mean much to most people, but those are the small things like that meant a lot to me, because I know your intent, your heart, what you're thinking. You don't even know me, to make sure that I'm prepared for my next meeting. And I took that away. I kind of scribbled it down to remember, because those are the things I think we have to make sure our people that we're leading know about us and how we care about them. And like, hey, George, I don't even know you, but I want to make sure you're ready for your next meeting, your next call. And it sounds like it's an important meeting. And those are just small things that I try to pick up on those things, because I think there's such a good lesson in there for me. So I can lead better, and so I can be better, here at my house with my children, with my wife. and things of that nature. So I really appreciated that. And I know you didn't even think that much about it when you said it. So I really appreciate that. I want to thank you. The one thing we didn't hit on, and we just don't have time for it right now, is that the school, the MBA program that you've referenced a few times at WashU, I have sat in on a few of those lectures. That is top notch. It is one of the best. Joe, I'd encourage you to go down and just figure out how you can sit in and listen.
Yep.
It's unbelievable. And the content that they have, the conversation they have, the problems they're trying to solve, how they're trying to build people up. I had a lady on named Edie Vardell who was part of that. She was on my podcast 2 years ago. She's got more energy than anybody that I've met.
Edie, oh my God. Edie is
she's the best.
Yes.
But we do have to stop. Don, I really appreciate your time. Joe, I really appreciate you setting this up. Don, I appreciate you having time for us. There's probably another hour episode in here somewhere. I just know there is. So.
And I appreciate you guys. The chance to be able to talk about this, something I love, some really cogent and interesting professionals. Thank you guys. I am proud of it. I'm proud of our military, humbly proud. That's a key word, humbly proud. It's because I'm very, very lucky to have been a part of it. And for your Marine friend, I'll just offer this final thought. There's no such thing as a former Marine. He's not a former Marine. He is a Marine veteran. Boy,
I'll make sure I don't say that to him. I don't want to disrespect.
There's your next tip, George.
I got another one. Perfect.
By the way, when you do get a chance to talk to him, and I really mean this from sincerity, tell him there's an old Air Force retired guy who says, I don't know you for Jack Adam, but you served in the Marines, you're a Marine veteran, and my hat is off to you.
Yep.
First Bureau is always on me.
Yeah. He's a good friend, so I will make sure to do that.
Yeah.
How can people track you down, Don? Is LinkedIn the best way maybe to get connected?
LinkedIn is probably the best. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make sure Halpin. Yep.
I'll make sure all of Don's information are in the show notes. I encourage everybody. I reached out to him today. I hadn't met him before today. I reached out to him on LinkedIn to be connected with him, to continue to learn about his journey and what he has out there. I hope there's so much in here. This is an episode where I will go back and listen and take notes and try to implement a lot of what you said with our teams that we're trying to build. So I really appreciate it, Don. Have a great, again, reach out to all of us. Joe's on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Don's on LinkedIn. We'll have everything in the show notes. Don, again, I really appreciate the hour with you.
And thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Take